Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So today is very interesting. I have a different kind of video for us today, and it's going to be probably a long one, so I apologize for that right now. The MCU officially has about 46 projects or something like that in it, and it is absolutely insane to me. So from the years 2008 to 2018, we had the Infinity Saga, something that spanned from every movie from the first Iron Man movie to Spider-Man Far From Home is considered the end of the Infinity Saga, and that is 23 movies over the span of 10 years, and in the last 5 years since Avengers Endgame, we have had 23 different MCU projects, if you count the different seasons as different projects. And I think that that's really interesting. So, a lot of people constantly talk about, like, oh, this is the best thing since Avengers Endgame, or oh, this is the best thing since this movie. And I think it's really weird that we still compare everything to Avengers Endgame. And I think it's really interesting that, like, movies that are like standalone superhero movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are for some reason still being compared to Avengers Endgame, even though that was like a huge event type movie. And I think it's really weird that we as Marvel fans are trying to compare every single individual film to Avengers Endgame, or trying to say that it is the best film since Avengers Endgame. And I just want to kind of go on here and kind of defend Marvel Phase 5 and Marvel Phase 4, because I think for the most part, it does a lot of really interesting things. And I will say, although the majority of the projects kind of fall flat on their face towards the end of the films or the end of the shows or whatever, I will say that I think for the most part, they each introduce us to new characters, which are really cool, and they introduce us to concepts that I think work really well. And I think that as soon as Marvel gets the chance to start working on some new projects and really sticking the landing with where each of these characters go from their original stories, I think that the future of the MCU is looking very bright right now. I think that the end credit scene and the final scene of the Marvels, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Marvels, I am going to be talking about it later. I'm not spoiling anything here, but I think that the way that they ended the Marvels is a great way to set up the future of the MCU. So personally, I think that things are going to be looking better soon. But I just kind of wanted to go through every single project that has came out so far, Marvel Phase 4 and Marvel Phase 5, and say one positive about it. I had to write down a giant list of this, because I'm going to be honest, I am so disappointed in myself. I used to be able to tell you every single movie and stuff in the MCU without, like, having to look it up or having to, like, fact check myself. I had to Google, like, 4 times every single project that has came out since Avengers Endgame, and it was difficult. So we're gonna do this in no particular order, because I have my notes written down in no particular order. Far From Home is considered a part of the Infinity Saga, but since it is after Endgame, I am gonna say something that was good about it. I think that the live action suit for Mysterio is absolutely incredible, and I think that the entire sequence with Tom Holland's Spider-Man having to figure out how to use his spider sense to kind of beat the Mysterio's illusions is incredibly well done. I think that the way that they brought Mysterio to live action and they got Jake Gyllenhaal to play him, who is absolutely incredible in the role, I think that it was really good. I think that the only problem with Far From Home is the giant plot hole that Tony Stark left a pair of glasses to a literal child without any notes or any form of, like, built-in protocols to explain to him, like, hey, maybe don't give these to a person you just met. But that being said, other than that, I think that Spider-Man Far From Home is pretty good. Now to get to some of the more difficult ones. Black Widow. I will be honest, this is one of the movies that I struggled most with finding a positive. But I will say this, it introduced us to Yelena Belova, and I think that Florence Pugh's portrayal of this character so far has been pretty good. And I think that the sisterly bond between Natasha and Yelena Belova is pretty good in the movie. And I think that Red Guardian, David Harbour, is pretty fun in the movie as well. When I first watched it, I thought that he was a little too over the top, but after rewatching it, I will say I think I like the Red Guardian a little bit more every time I rewatch that movie. And I still, to this day, think that movie probably would have been great if it came out chronologically when it was supposed to. The next one, we got WandaVision. I think that WandaVision is one of the best for episodic shows. I think the fact that they made each of the first, like, 5 or 6 episodes kind of mirror a different, like, decade of sitcoms. I think that was really fun. I think that they really stuck to their guns about the fact that this was going to be a TV show, and it's one of the only MCU Disney Plus shows that really feels like a TV show. The episodic from this episode to this episode to this episode worked really well, and I think there was a lot of really cool plot twists. And I think that one of the only places where this show failed was the fact that they didn't let Wanda overcoming her grief be the entire story. They felt the need to include a supervillain in it. But other than that, I think WandaVision is fantastic. The next one, Loki. I think Loki Season 1, Loki Season 2, if you put them together, is the greatest character development that Marvel has ever done. I think it's the greatest story that Marvel's ever done. I think that from start to finish, it is just absolutely perfection. I think that there's a couple of plot holes here and there. Like for one, season 2, they introduce Brad Wolf and they make him like seem like he's going to be this super huge important character, and they don't do anything with him. And then both Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes kind of like all of a sudden just disappear after episode 4 of season 2. But other than that, I think Loki is the best project in the entirety of the MCU, even if you count the Infinity Saga. And I want to give a shout out to Richard E. Grant's glorious purpose moment where he conjures up the entirety of Asgard, and it is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to start speeding up a little bit because this is going to be a really long video if I don't. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think that everything that they did with Isaiah Bradley was really interesting, and I like the fact that they're showing us more about failed Captain America projects, because from the comics, that is kind of how Wolverine kind of starts getting his powers, and he gets the adamantium in his like skin. So I think that showing some of the like past stuff that's happened in the MCU is pretty cool, and I really like what they did with John Walker. I like the fact that they showed the opposite of Captain Rogers, where he was a good man but not a perfect soldier, and now they have a perfect soldier but not a good man. And I love everything that they did with this character. I think that the way that they ended episode 4 and they had him literally like beating somebody up and there being a bunch of blood on the shield, I thought that that was incredibly cool, and it was one of the most violent sequences that the MCU had up to that point, and it really showed us that the MCU is starting to making more adult content, which I really like. Alright, Shang-Chi. So first of all, I want to go ahead and say I think Simu Liu is absolutely incredible, and I'm excited to have him in the MCU. I think that the martial arts in this is incredible. I think it has some of the best fight choreography in the entirety of the MCU, and I think that the father versus son dynamic is incredibly well done. I think that this movie had potential to be an incredible movie. They just had to add a bunch of CGI nothingness into the end of the movie for no reason. Next up, we have the Eternals. I am a big fan of the Eternals. I am a big defender of the Eternals. I watched it in theaters, and I literally was like, this does not feel like a Marvel movie in the best of ways. It felt so fresh. It felt so original. I think that it's one of the best directed movies in the entirety of the MCU. I think the only problem it has is too many characters in a short amount of time, which I think now that they've killed off a decent amount of them, Eternals 2 has potential to be a really, really good movie, and I'm very disappointed that we're probably not going to be getting it. But, like, this was a great setup for that movie because it introduced us to Kingo, who I think is great. It introduces us to Makari, who I think is fantastic. It introduces us to Druig, who I think was also really well done. And Dastos, the sequence where he's in Hiroshima and he's crying about the fact that he accidentally gave them the tools that they needed to make a nuclear bomb. Really beautiful scene. I think that Eternals is a very overlooked MCU movie, but I thought it was pretty good. It had a lot of great scenes in it. It just was too much for the 2-hour runtime that it had. Thor: Love and Thunder. I struggled a lot with this one because I really hate what they did with Thor's character in this movie, and I really hate what they did with Korg in this movie. I think that Korg dying in this movie would have made it 10 times better. But the thing that I have that's great to say for Thor: Love and Thunder is if you take away the one line of dialogue where Jane says, "Eat my hammer" in the final sequence, I think everything that they do with Jane Foster as Lady Thor is actually pretty good. I think that the Mighty Thor storyline works relatively well. I think that that's when the movie takes itself the most seriously, and I think that those sequences work incredibly well. I think that her fighting her disease and fighting her cancer as a scientist and not being able to, find an answer and then turning to magic is actually a very interesting complex that they explored, and I think that Taika Waititi actually did relatively good at making that part of the story work really well and really coherently. Up next, we got the Hawkeye show. I just want to say Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop is the best casting decision that I think Marvel has made in a really long time. I think that her dynamic that she has with Jeremy Renner in the entire show is incredible, and I like the fact that like WandaVision, this is one of the best Disney Plus shows that really feels episodic. Like, if you watch from one episode to the next episode to the next episode, each episode kind of has their own contained story, and then it's slowly building over time, and then we get Kingpin revealed in the last episode, which I think is really fun. And I think that there's the action sequence where they have the giant car chase, and it's like, I want to say like a 4-minute long one shot of them getting to the car, running to the car, and then the first half of the car chase is a one shot. That entire car chase sequence is one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of the MCU. It is incredibly fun. They get to test out all of the trick arrows in a way that makes sense. It's one of the first sequences where we see Hawkeye being deaf and actually having to deal with his hearing loss. And I think that entire show is actually very overlooked. I think it's one of the best shows that the MCU has put out. The next one, What If? I think that it is animated, and it is one of the most cinematically beautiful things that the MCU has done. I think that there's a lot of individual shots that are just so beautiful. Like the shot with Hawkeye shooting an arrow into the giant pit of Ultron bots, that entire sequence where they go to the wide frame and it's just him sacrificing himself is absolutely beautiful. And I think Ultron Infinity is a top 5 MCU villain. You can quote me on it. I don't care. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I will say this, as somebody who's a huge fan of Ant-Man 1 and Ant-Man 2, this is a very disappointing movie, and I will admit that it is pretty bad. But I do think that Jonathan Majors' performance as Kang here is really good. I think that he's a very intimidating villain, and I will say that I like Michael Douglas's performance as Hank Pym, and I like the fact that we get to see him doing more Ant-Man stuff in this movie. Miss Marvel, for the most part, I really do not like the Miss Marvel show. I think that it's tonally all over the place, but I will say Aman Vellani as Miss Marvel is incredibly well done, and I think that the first two episodes have a really great teen coming-of-age feeling, and then the last episode brings back that nice, really good teenage coming-of-age feeling, and I think that as a Marvel project that is aimed towards a younger audience, I think that it is incredibly well done with that. I think it's incredibly funny. I think it has a lot of charm, and I really like the stylistic, like, cartoons that she makes. I like the fact that it shows us the MCU from the eyes of somebody who's a fan. It shows us the Avengers Con. I think that there's a lot of cool little, like, not necessarily street level, because a lot of times you say street level, people are going to assume that you're talking about, like, you know, like Kingpin and stuff like that. But I think it does a good job of showing us, like, just the regular citizens' POV of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She-Hulk, once again, this is one that was a little bit hard to find a plus side to. I think that they were setting up something that was incredibly cool, and then they trolled us with it, and I really hated the fact that pretty much every single episode was like, oh, we could do this really cool thing, but we're not going to, and they just, like, kept hanging a lantern on it, which is a term that basically means, like, they have a massive flaw with their show, and they address it, so all of a sudden it's not a problem anymore. It was still a problem, but for She-Hulk, I have the entire Daredevil episode. I think that everything about that Daredevil episode was really, really good. I think seeing Charlie Cox as somebody who's more of a mentor figure was really, really interesting. And I like the kind of emotional pep talk that he gives her about how you can do a lot of good and how you can help people as Jennifer Walters. And when the law can't help people, you can help them as She-Hulk. That entire, like, scene was really good. We got a hallway fight, which was great. And it kind of makes me wish that we got a little bit more of Charlie Cox's Daredevil in Spider-Man No Way Home, because his performance in this is just great, and I can't wait for Daredevil Born Again. Next up, we have the I Am Groot shorts. I think that these are just a fun little thing to throw on. I think that they're great to just, like, if you want to watch some Marvel content but you don't really have a lot of time, you can just throw them on. They're usually pretty funny, and they actually have a surprisingly good amount of character development. Like, these actually show us how this Groot is different from Alpha Groot from the original Guardians of the Galaxy movie. He likes to dance, he likes artwork, and I really think that they do a good job of showing how he was a young, adventurous spirit. And this one, once again, like Ms. Marvel, it's aimed towards a younger audience. I think that a lot of, like, parents of the MCU who want to watch something that their kids could also enjoy could throw that on, and I think it's great. Next up, we have Moonknight. In my opinion, this is one of the best shows, the entire MCU. I think that Oscar Isaac is absolutely incredible in this. I think that it's one of the few shows that doesn't have a problem with the villain. I think Arthur Harrow being introduced in the beginning of the show and being the villain the entire show is so refreshing, because a lot of Marvel shows have a problem with, oh, they're just going to tease a villain and then tease a villain and then tease a villain, and then at the end of episode 5, they reveal who the villain is, and then episode 6 feels rushed and they just quickly defeat the villain, which I really hate. Whereas in this episode, he's kind of, like, there, and he's a threat the entirety of the show, which is really nice. And then I think that the costume design for this is absolutely incredible. I think that the look of the Scarlet Scarab suit is really, really nice, and I think that the look of the Moon Knight suits are also really good, and Oscar Isaac's acting is just incredible in this. Next up, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is the best conclusion to a trilogy in the entirety of the MCU, and I think after it came out, it retrospectively helped Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I think it makes it so the overall Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy is the best trilogy in the MCU, and I feel like you honestly can't argue against it. I think that Captain America is a close second. I think that Spider-Man is also up there, but Guardians of the Galaxy is insanely well done, and I think that seeing Rocket Raccoon's origin story in this was great. I think the High Evolutionary was an incredible villain, and I also think it's refreshing having a villain who you're not going to side with at all. It's just a villain that you absolutely hate because he's terrible, which is great. The next one I have is Spider-Man No Way Home. I absolutely love this movie. I think this is one of the best theatrical experiences I've ever had in my life, and it honestly might be probably for a really long time the best theatrical experience I've ever had in my life. I think seeing Toby, Andrew, and Tom all acting as Spider-Man together is really, really nice, and I love the return of Electro. Jamie Foxx's Electro is cool. I like the way that they made him more comic accurate. I think that Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman was really good, and William Dafoe, the absolute GOAT, was incredible in this. And Alfred Molina's Doc Ock was also really pleasant surprise to have back in this. And I like the fact that it ends Tom Holland's trilogy being an entire slow burn origin story, which was epic. The next one I have is Werewolf by Night. One of my favorite things about Werewolf by Night was the fact that they never announced it. They just dropped it. It was a really cool like surprise, and it was a nice little holiday special event. And I really like the special presentations. I really hope that they keep doing it. And I really like that it's a self-contained story. You don't have to watch anything else in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe to watch it. And I like that it's a nice black and white, vintage, old school monster horror film, and I like that it introduces Man-Thing, and he's incredibly great in it, and Jack Russell is also pretty good. This one was an absolute dumpster fire, if I'm being totally honest, but Secret Invasion, I will say one thing that I really enjoyed about it is Ben Mendelsohn and Samuel L. Jackson's chemistry. I think that they bounce off of each other incredibly well, and I think the first 3 episodes, they have some of the best dialogue in the entirety of Marvel Phase 4 and Marvel Phase 5. It just really sucks that they clearly had no idea where they wanted to go with this show, and the final episodes really, really sucked, and I really hate it. The next one, we have the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I think that this is incredibly fun. It is going to be a new Christmas tradition to watch this every single year. It's a nice 45-minute long thing to throw on. Them stealing Kevin Bacon and, literally kidnapping somebody as a Christmas present is so funny. And I think that the entirety of this little special presentation was really, really nice to see all of these characters having a really good fun time before Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was going to traumatize us. And then another thing that I want to say is this has a lot of really good original Christmas music, which I really appreciate James Gunn for going out of his way to do that. I get to update my Christmas music playlist, and I'm so grateful for that. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Marvels and you actually care, because apparently a lot of the people aren't going to see the Marvels and they really don't care that they're missing the Marvels, which I think is a shame because it was a fun movie, and I think Amon Villani and Brie Larson and I can't remember the name of the actress who plays Monica Rambeau, but I think that those 3 actresses bounce off each other incredibly well, and I think that for the most part Nia DaCosta's directing is really good. I think that they just edited this and cropped it to be way too short, because there's definitely a lot of signs that there were scenes that were going to be in the movie that just are not there for some reason. And other than the pacing, I think that The Marvels is a relatively good movie, and things that I really like about it are the first 25 minutes, we see some of the coolest action sequences ever, because they're all 3 on different planets or in different parts of, wherever they are in the galaxy, and they're just switching places and fighting a bunch of random Kree soldiers, and it's a lot of really interesting action sequences. And one of my favorite bits about that is the sequence where we get to see Kamala Khan fighting with Nick Fury, and she's fangirling, but also her and Nick Fury are working together to fight these Kree soldiers, and their teamwork is so good, and it's so fun, and I absolutely love that. And then I think overall it has a really, really great way to set up the Young Avengers, and I personally am incredibly excited for the Young Avengers, and I think that the way that they're setting it up and the way that it's kind of going to be seeming like Kamala Khan's kind of going to be the leader of this team, because she's obsessed with superheroes and she kind of has an idea of how superheroes work, is fun. We got 2 more, second to last one, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. The introduction to Namor is incredible. After Black Adam came out, I think the month before it, and Black Adam was one of the worst portrayals of Black Adam they could have possibly done. Black Adam character is a character who is primarily just absolutely pissed at the world, somebody who is so vengeful, somebody who is a giant, dictator, and he hates humanity. And for this to come out the next month, and Namor was just so fucking good at being exactly what I wanted out of the Black Adam movie. I think Namor is one of the greatest, little anti-heroes that they have going on right now. And I also think that the introduction to Ironheart, ignore her CGI suit at the end, ignore whatever the weird Wakanda Angels, I don't even remember what they're called. The weird CGI suits at the end of the movie were all terrible, okay? I 100% agree with that. But the Ironheart character, Dominique Thornton's performance, is so much fun. And then finally, the last one, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I think that Sam Raimi directing this movie actually gave this movie a lot of opportunities to have a lot of really cool sequences. I think that the sequence where Doctor Strange has to take over his own dead body and dreamwalk into his own dead body and then use the souls of the damned to create a cape and then fly over to Wanagor Mountain is such an insane sequence, and it's really, really visually beautiful. And then I also want to say that the entire Illuminati sequence, a lot of people are like, that's just cheap fan service. I thought it was great. And I think it's one of the most violent sequences we've seen in the entire MCU. And I kind of like the fact that we get to see Wanda, who's one of the most powerful people in the MCU, being as powerful as she is. This to me was very refreshing, because it's one of the first movies that has Wanda in it that didn't nerf her at all. But yeah, that was me trying to say something positive about every single MCU project that's came out since Avengers Endgame. I think I did relatively well. There are a couple of movies and shows in there that I did kind of still trash on, because let's be honest, of everything that has came out since Avengers Endgame, the majority of it has been pretty decent. It's just when it's bad, it's really, really bad. But that being said, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Rain, 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 rain. Dear, 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 dear. I don't know what Christmas is, but Christmas time is here. I definitely did not get the tone or the melody of that right at all. That's okay.
He wanted me to drop a verse, I did this. We planned a day, and then we did this. Wanna be in love with the girls with the kisses. Don't give a damn, I'll written this. I like this when I run the distance. I run the 5K, you go ballistics. I wanna live within the business. Buying more than what's on the clearances. You're getting big cause I know you're a physicist. I wanna deny this shit, I'm unlimited.